John Sweeney never appeared extraordinary. He was not famous, wealthy, or outwardly intimidating. He was a carpenter from the Liverpool area who moved constantly, drifting between short-term jobs on construction sites across the UK and mainland Europe. That transient lifestyle allowed him to pass unnoticed, blending into cities where people rarely ask questions about where you came from or where you are going next. Yet beneath that ordinary exterior was a man whose life followed a consistent and deeply disturbing pattern: control, violence, disappearance, and escalation. By the time the full truth emerged, Sweeney had left a trail of devastation spanning decades, borders, and multiple victims. In December 1986, Sweeney met Melissa Halstead, an American model and photographer living in London. At first, their relationship seemed exciting and unconventional. They lived in fashionable areas such as Chelsea and moved within creative circles that valued individuality and freedom. Sweeney presented himself as artistic and bohemian, sketching drawings, talking about art, and sharing what looked like a carefree lifestyle. For a young woman far from home, this relationship may have offered companionship, familiarity, and emotional grounding. But beneath that surface image, something far darker was already forming. Sweeney was heavily involved in drugs and alcohol, and his temper was volatile. As the relationship progressed, his behavior became increasingly abusive. Melissa was assaulted more than once, and the relationship became defined by fear as much as affection. Despite this, she remained with him, reassuring her family that she loved him. This contradiction is often difficult for outsiders to understand, but it reflects the reality of coercive control. Violence does not always arrive suddenly, it grows slowly, eroding confidence and convincing victims that escape is impossible or dangerous. When Melissa's UK visa expired, she was deported. This moment should have marked a clean break. Instead, Melissa attempted to rebuild her life by moving to mainland Europe, first settling in Vienna. Sweeney followed her. His pursuit was not romantic persistence, it was obsession. He tracked down her address, broke into her apartment, tied her up, and interrogated her. Days later, he attacked her with a hammer, cracking her skull so badly that she required emergency surgery to survive. Austrian authorities arrested Sweeney and sentenced him to prison for the assault. During this period, Melissa confided in her sister about the terror she was living under. She made a chilling statement that would later haunt everyone who heard it. If anything ever happened to her, it would be John Sweeney, and he would leave nothing behind. Despite this fear, Melissa later appealed for Sweeney's early release. This decision highlights the psychological damage inflicted by long-term abuse. Victims can become emotionally bound to their abusers through fear, guilt, hope, and manipulation. Even extreme violence does not always break that bond. After Sweeney's release, the couple moved to Amsterdam. To outsiders, their life appeared to stabilize. They rented a flat, paid their rent on time, and caused no trouble. But appearances were deceptive. In April 1990, their landlord returned from holiday to find the apartment completely emptied. There were no belongings, no signs of a struggle, and no explanation. Around the same time, a bag was discovered floating in a Rotterdam canal. Inside were the dismembered remains of a woman. With no immediate way to identify the body and no missing person report linking to it, the investigation stalled. Melissa Halstead effectively vanished without triggering the urgency such a disappearance deserved. Years passed. Sweeney resurfaced in London and entered another relationship, this time with nurse Delia Balmer. What followed was a prolonged campaign of psychological and physical abuse. Sweeney isolated her, controlled her movements, monitored her constantly, and restrained her in her own home. He threatened her repeatedly and displayed disturbing behaviors that suggested fixation and planning. Balmer lived in constant fear, aware that leaving could provoke lethal retaliation. In December 1994, after being arrested for assault-related offenses, Sweeney was released on bail. Despite Balmer warning authorities about what he would do, she received little protection. Days later, Sweeney ambushed her outside her flat, attacking her with an axe and a knife. She suffered catastrophic injuries and came within moments of death. Only the intervention of a neighbor saved her life. Balmer survived, but her body and mind were permanently scarred by the attack. Once again, Sweeney disappeared. For years, he evaded capture by living under false names, working cash and hand jobs, and moving frequently. His ability to remain at large highlighted systemic failures in tracking dangerous offenders and taking survivor warnings seriously. During this time, he continued to live among ordinary people, unnoticed and unchallenged. In 2001, another horrifying discovery was made. Dismembered human remains were found in London's Regent's Canal. The victim was identified as Paula Fields, a 31-year-old woman from Liverpool. Her background was complex and vulnerable, marked by addiction and instability, factors that often reduce urgency and resources when someone goes missing. The method of disposal echoed the earlier Dutch case, raising suspicions of a serial pattern. Police traced Paula Fields' last known contacts and eventually focused on a man using an alias. Surveillance revealed that this man was John Sweeney, who had been wanted for the attempted murder of Delia Balmer for over 5 years. His arrest marked a turning point. For the first time, investigators began to piece together the full scale of his violent history. Searches of Sweeney's property uncovered weapons, restraints, and materials associated with body disposal. Even more disturbing were the drawings and poems found among his belongings and later in his prison cell. These were not vague or symbolic pieces of art. They depicted explicit violence, dismemberment, and references to specific victims and locations. Some contained hidden details that only the killer could have known. His artwork revealed not only knowledge of the crimes, but a disturbing pride in them. For nearly 2 decades, Melissa Halstead's remains had remained unidentified in the Netherlands. In 2008, a Dutch cold case team re-examined preserved forensic samples using improved databases. The remains found in Rotterdam in 1990 were finally identified as Melissa's. This breakthrough confirmed what her family had feared for years and allowed investigators to formally link her murder to Paula Fields' death and to John Sweeney. British and Dutch authorities collaborated to bring Sweeney to trial. The case faced major challenges, including the lack of a traditional crime scene and limited physical forensic evidence. Instead, prosecutors relied on survivor testimony, circumstantial links, behavioral patterns, and Sweeney's own artwork. In 2011, after a 4-week trial at the Old Bailey, the jury found him guilty of murdering Melissa Halstead and Paula Fields and of perverting the course of justice. He was sentenced to a whole life tariff, ensuring he would never be released. For the families of Melissa Halstead and Paula Fields, the verdict brought confirmation, but not closure. Both women were murdered, dismembered, and discarded, with parts of their bodies never recovered. Delia Balmer survived, but she continues to live with lifelong pain, trauma, and the knowledge that her warnings were not acted upon in time. Investigators have since suggested that Sweeney may have been responsible for other crimes that remain unsolved. Lesson. The strongest lesson from this case is not just about one man's cruelty, but about the consequences of ignoring warning signs. Control, intimidation, and psychological abuse are not lesser forms of violence. They are often the foundation of lethal outcomes. This case shows how systems failed to connect patterns across borders, failed to prioritize survivor testimony, and failed to intervene decisively when the danger was clear. Violence does not begin with murder, it begins with control that is tolerated, minimized, or dismissed. When warnings are ignored, abusers are given time, and time is exactly what allows violence to become fatal. If this video unsettled you, it should. It's not just a true crime case. It's a warning about what happens when violence hides in plain sight and warning signs are ignored. Remember the names of the victims, listen to survivors, and never dismiss control as love. And if you want more real stories told honestly and responsibly, like and subscribe for deeper investigations like this.